r/NoSleep. Posted by u/Castle Rock 80. Sirens started this morning, now we're unable to leave our house. The sirens started at 7 o'clock this morning. Groggily, I sat up in my bed before nudging the sleeping shape next to me. "Dan," I muttered while reaching for my phone, "Dan, get up, there's something happening." He replied in a grunt that ended his snore fest. I unlocked my phone and was greeted with an alarm and one of those emergency notifications. You know, the ones that show up whenever there's a tornado or there's some kid that went missing. "Jack, turn that shit off." Dan groaned while rubbing the sleep out of his face. I could feel a knot grow in my stomach. Ding. A notification from my local newspaper pulled up: "Do not interact with the people outside. They are not your friends and they are not your family. You do not recognize them. Stay in a safe space away from vulnerable areas, such as places with windows or doors. This message will be enforced until further notice." Oh shit. Dan, after hearing the uneasiness in my voice, sat up and read what was on my phone. The sirens continued to blare outside. They mixed and harmonized with each other until they reached one jarring note. "What do you think it means, these people outside?" I asked while dragging a rolled air mattress down the basement stairs. "I dunno, maybe it's some weird hallucinogenic gas? Maybe a bunch of prisoners escaped?" Dan and I spent the next half hour grabbing whatever we could and traveling down into our basement. We closed all the blinds and locked every door. In the basement, we were encased in total darkness. A battery-powered lamp was brought down with several extra batteries. We were prepared for a long night. My clock said that only 2 hours had passed since the sirens started, but it felt like a lifetime ago. I passed the time by watching Criminal Minds on my phone with Dan. "Hey, I'm gonna go to the bathroom, I'll be right back." Dan handed me one of the lamps for the treacherous journey, rushing to the bathroom in the dark while the ache in your bladder grows is fucking horrid, and I traveled up the flight of stairs. After tripping on the final stair, I was back in my living room. Across the hallway was the bathroom. As I walked to the bathroom, I passed one of the windows that we closed. One peek to see what was happening wouldn't hurt, right? I twisted the little twisty knob, no one knows what those are called, that opened the blinds and peered outside. A mist had settled over my front yard, but it was visible enough to see shapes of people outside. Through the haze, I could see the attire of my elderly neighbor, Mr. Parkin. He dazedly walked down the street, shuffling his feet with each step. He was wearing a white button-down shirt with gray slacks. Atop his head was a bowler hat. I chuckled at the sight of his formal attire. That was an enormous mistake. I'm not sure how he heard me, maybe he didn't, but instead saw the blinds move in unison with my laugh, but he turned towards me and stepped out of his disguise. That thing that originally looked like Mr. Parkin shifted. That's the best way to describe it. It was like when you stare at the wall through your hand and then stare back at your hand again. He almost became condensed, like every molecule in his body got a little bit closer. With this change, I could see that his clothes were tattered and covered with strange dark stains that were slowly spreading. Those parts were bad, but his face was worse. In horror, my eyes traveled up to his face, where I was greeted with a ball of gore and clumps of hair. There was nothing recognizable about the old man who had lived next to me for the last decade. Through the grotesque clump, I could see one eye and a few teeth. Bits of brain matter oozed out of where the ears used to be. The thing lurched towards my window. In a flurry of tangled string and hushed curses, I managed to get the blinds closed again. I raced back to the basement stairs, no longer caring about the pee which begged to be released. Once in the basement, I was greeted by my worried boyfriend. I collapsed and tried to tell him the story over my own sobs. "It's been a while since I came back down here. I've been hurriedly typing this on my computer as a goodbye letter to everyone. I've heard scratches and thumps from outside, but I don't think they're able to get in the house. If they do, then goodbye everyone. I love you, Mom." Dan sends his love to everyone, too. I'll try to update if we can get out of here. The next story of this video. Posted by u/LaSalle8. Fishing in my backwoods town. The following takes place shortly after the events of Honey Hollow Road. After a terrifying night on Honey Hollow Road, we had had enough of scary things for a while and decided our next outing would be something more peaceful. Eventually we decided to go fishing in the town park. Nice, peaceful, relaxing, fishing with friends. I never imagined anything could go wrong. I was completely unprepared for what would happen. We met up at the park in the morning on a day we all had off. Everyone except Ashley was dressed like we were actual experienced fishermen. We really aren't, and it showed we were all from the country. Ashley on the other hand wore a skirt, tank top, and an obnoxiously neon pink vest, clearly not from the area, and no experience fishing. We got some music play on an old portable radio, and relaxed, fishing on the dock. We talked and enjoyed each other's company, but nothing was biting. Around 2 hours in, Ashley began to get nervous and holding Carter tightly. Almost immediately after she began to act this way, Carter had the first bite of the day. As he reeled it in, we noticed something was wrong. We could see his line pulling something in on the water's surface. We all got nervous, looking to one another, suspecting and beginning to realize what he had on his line. What appeared to be a human body. We panicked and dragged it out of the water and onto the dock. He wore a long dark blue jacket, trousers, and a thick shirt. His face was bloated and pale, he had white hair and beard. And he was dead. We panicked and talked about what to do. Stacy began trying to get service on her phone. In this town, that was pointless. As we talked, Stacy began to run towards us, panicking, looking at something past us, repeating, "Oh my God." I turned to see what she was seeing, and to my shock the man was now standing. She began attempting to talk with the man, trying to make sure he was alright. But he paid her no attention. He reached into each of his pockets, pulled out an old-fashioned pipe in one hand and a cloth bag with the other. He poured the contents of the bag into the pipe and put the bag back into his pocket, where he pulled out a box of wood matches. Despite them all being soaked, he lit them and somehow began to smoke and walk away. He paid us no mind and couldn't even be physically slowed by Carter. He walked out of the park and into a pub. We followed, but when we entered he was gone. The people inside hadn't seen him but seemed to not be the slightest surprised at what we told them had happened. Carter would later find out there was a story about the ghost of a sailor that frequented that bar that had drowned and would sometimes wash up on shore and return to that bar. I wasn't ready to accept that story at that time, and insisted it was a prank by some local. I insisted we continue to fish and try to relax. I was hellbent on having a relaxing fishing trip with my friends even if it killed us. Looking back, I should have accepted defeat and done anything else. We went back to fishing on the dock, but now there was an awkward silence amongst us. No one was comfortable. It was the afternoon when I finally got a bite. I started to reel it in and Ashley panicked again and demanded I let my pole go. It was as if she knew what was coming. I ignored her. Catching just one fish would make this whole trip worth it. The thing on the other end of my line yanked me off the dock and dragged me out, and deep into the river. I held on in panic but eventually let go and found myself at least 30 feet out. On the dock, Ashley was trying her hardest to keep Carter and Stacy from going in after me, and on the dock, I looked back and saw some sort of orb approaching me. A primal fear washed over me and I began to swim towards the dock for my life. I had no chance and could hear Stacy screaming hysterically while crying. Carter screaming, "Hurry!" I felt the water behind me get colder as the thing approached. I imagined a shark about to bite down on my leg and my head. And then I felt something like a rope on my hand. I grabbed it and tried to pull myself faster through the water, and it seemed to pull back. I went to let go after I had pulled it down near my waist, but it seemingly wrapped around my arm and began to drag me. My head kept going under the surface and I couldn't tell what was happening, but the thing on my arm was dragging me. I was in desperate need of oxygen and was panicking. Was this the thing that had pulled me into the water? Was it dragging me to my death? I fought to free myself from it, but it was too powerful. Then it came to a near sudden stop. I was able to get my head above surface and found myself looking up at my friends. I was only a few feet from the dock and they were reaching out for me. But there was something wrong with Ashley's face. It happened so fast I couldn't register what I was seeing, but her face seemed to shrink back to normal in some way. I reached them and they pulled me up. Stacy cried and held me tight as the others tried to check on me. I looked back to the water and about 15 feet away I could see the orb under the surface, and beneath it, a few feet apart, the glimmer of what looked like two narrow eyes. Its dark shape turned and swam away. It was huge, an extremely long thing. It had the size of a shark but extraordinarily long. It disappeared into the darkness of the deep. I thanked my friends for saving me, and asked where they got that rope. Carter and Stacy seemed shocked and confused by my question, but Ashley responds cheerfully with a smile, "No problem. We're just so glad you're okay," and pulled everyone in for a hug. I would later ask Stacy and Carter about the rope, but Stacy was clueless, but Carter seemed to know something. Unfortunately, all he would tell me is that Ashley had found it. I was very confused about the day's events, but one thing was clear to me. Fuck fishing. It's nowhere near as relaxing as I previously thought.